Charlie? Or chicken?
Well, I would like to issue everyone a pleasant good evening. It's now 6:30. We are still waiting for our speaker to show up. The topic tonight is the medical health care amendment. Basically, he thinks that there should be a constitutional amendment for free health care for everybody. My own big concern is how we're going to pay for it. With our speaker not being here tonight, I'd like to start off, after our brief announcements period, to have you guys come up and first tell about your experiences with the American medical system, whether it be good, whether it be bad. I'll give you each about 4 or 5 minutes to go ahead and talk.
Is he not coming?
Once our speaker shows, if he shows, we can then proceed with the regular program. If not, we'll get into Obamacare and its implications, and we'll make it a good night having to wing it again. My personally is that I hate winging these things. I think it's a supreme insult when our speaker does not show up after being invited and billed. But in the tradition, all we're going to say is thank God for an internet connection and some other things. We're going to be talking tonight about health care, its amendments, and particularly I just want to briefly go over some of the funding mechanisms for health care and why I think an equal rights medical amendment, even though it sounds like a good idea, how are we going to pay for that universal care? Universal health care starts out sometimes as known as universal health coverage, universal coverage, or universal care. And in a lot of the history of it, the Soviet Union experimented with health care in 1937, extended equal residence all its rural residents in 1939. New Zealand created a universal care system with a series of steps from 1939 to 1941. And on July 5th, 1948, the United Kingdom implemented its universal health, national health service. Universal health care was the next introduced to the Nordic countries of Sweden in 1955, Iceland in 1956, Norway also in 1956, Denmark in 61, Finland in 1964. Universal health insurance was then implemented in Japan in 1961, Saskatchewan in 62, followed by the rest of Canada finally being implemented in the fullest form in 1972. Twice in Australia in 1974 and 1984. Universal national health services were then introduced in the southern countries, in Italy in 1978, Portugal in 79, Greece in 1983, and Spain in 1986, followed by South Korea in 1989, Taiwan in 1985, Israel in 1995, and from the 1970s to the 1990s, the Western European countries, Austria, Belgium, France, and Germany, and Luxembourg expanded their healthcare systems to provide nearly universal coverage, as did the Netherlands. Now, several of these places have used it, and it's all things. The one thing, universal health care in most countries has been achieved by a mixed model of funding. General taxation revenue is the primary source of funding, but in many countries it is supplemented by specific levies, which may be charged to the individual and or the employer, or with the option of private, sorry about this, or with the implementation of private insurance funding. Huh?
Just keep talking.
Okay. How's this? Can everybody hear me still? All right. A distinction is made between municipal, basically the majority of healthcare systems are funded primarily by tax revenue. Spain, Denmark, Sweden, some nations such as Germany, France, and Japan employ a multi-payer system in which health care is provided by public and private contributions. However, much of the non-government funding is by contributions by employers and employees to a regulated non-profit sickness funds. These contributions are compulsory and defined according to law. A distinction is also made between municipal and national health care funding. For example, one model is that the bulk of the health care is funded by the municipality. Specifically, health care is provided and possibly funded by a larger entity such as a municipal cooperation board or to the state, and the medications that are paid for by a thing. The thing that all these places have in common is that there is a major bank account everybody pays into the system, and everybody gets its benefits. One of the things that the United States has had right after World War II, and the reason for the employer health insurance coverage was that at that time there was a freeze on wages and benefits at a lot of the companies, and in the defense plants during World War II they wanted to entice workers to come in. So the only thing they could really use was benefits. And that's how we got our employer mandated healthcare system in the US. As costs went up, over time it was easily borne by the corporations of the United States and the large union representation of the 1950s, to be followed by the 60s with major advances in care which helped keep costs under control. In the early 1980s, it was already a concern that the healthcare funding was getting out of control, so they tried something called a Health Maintenance Organization, or HMOs, which basically means that people could join this organization, and perhaps maybe the insurance companies could then manage the out-of-control costs by advocating on behalf of the person in there. But it also led to a lot of people where you had denial of care, you had things. One of the funniest things is that the healthcare system today, as it's implemented in the city and around the nation, is that there are more people working for medical billing, medical coding, and trying to get funding through the doctor's offices than there has been with any other industry. The benefits of competition, scaling, and everything else have not yet come into full force. I'm now going to go on to a little bit of the various funding mechanisms for this and see how it works. The first one we have is basically compulsory insurance. This is usually enforced via legislations by requiring residents to purchase insurance. But sometimes, in effect, the government provides insurance. Sometimes there may be a multiple choice of multiple public or private funds, providing a standard service as in Germany, or sometimes as in a single public fund as in Canada. The Swiss healthcare system and the U.S. Patient and Protection and Affordable Care Act are both based on compulsory insurance. In some European countries there is a private insurance and universal healthcare, such as Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands. The problem with adverse selection is overcoming using a risk compensation pool to equalize as far as possible the risks between funds. Thus, with a fund of a predominantly healthy younger population has to pay into a compensation pool and to build a fund with older and predominantly less healthy population who would receive funds from the pool in this way. In this way, sickness funds compete on price. And there is no advantage to eliminate people with higher risk because they are compensated by means of risk-adjusted capitation payments. Funds are not allowed to pick and choose between their policyholders or deny coverage to the many people on price and service. In some countries, the basic level is set by the government and cannot be modified. Ireland at one time had a community rating system through VHI, effectively a single payer risk or common risk pool. The government later opened VHI to competition without a compensation tool. This resulted in foreign insurance companies entering the Irish market and offering cheap health insurance to relatively healthy segments of the market, which then made profits at VHI's expense. The government later reintroduced community rating through a pooling agreement with at least one major insurance company, Bupa. Then they withdrew from the Irish market. Among the potential solutions posited by economists are single-payer systems as well as other methods of ensuring that health insurance systems is universal, such as requiring all citizens to purchase insurance and limiting the ability of insurance companies to deny per insurance individuals or vary price between individuals. The next major funding for insurance is single payer, which basically means a single payer healthcare system in which the government, rather than the private insurers, pay all healthcare costs. Single payer systems may contract for healthcare services from private organizations, at least in the case in Canada, or may own and employ healthcare resources and personnel, as in the case of the United Kingdom. The term single payer thus describes only the funding mechanism and refers healthcare financed by a single public body from a single fund and does not specify the type of delivery or for whom doctors work. Although the fund holder is usually the state, some forms of single payer use a mixed private-public system. The other one is tax-based financing. In tax-based financing, individuals contribute to the provision of healthcare insurance through various taxes. These are typically pooled across the whole population unless local governments raise and retain tax revenues. Some countries, such as notably the United Kingdom, Canada, Ireland, Australia, Italy, Spain, and Portugal, and Greece, and the Nordic countries choose to fund healthcare directly from taxation alone. Other countries with insurance-based systems effectively meet the cost of insuring those to insure themselves via Social Security arrangements based from taxation, either by providing directly for their medical bills or paying insurance premiums for those affected. The next type of funding mechanisms is social health insurance. In social health insurance, contributions from workers, the self-employed, enterprises, and government are pooled into single or multiple funds on a compulsory basis. These funds typically contract with a mix of public and private providers for the provision of a specified health benefit. Preventative and public health may be provided by these funds or responsibility kept solely by the Ministry of Health. Within social health insurance, a number of functions may be executed by parastatal or non-government sickness funds, and in a few cases by private health insurance companies. Another model for funding is what we call private insurance. In private health insurance, premiums are paid directly from employers, associations, individuals, families to insurance companies which pool risks across their membership base. Private insurance policies includes sold by commercial for-profit firms, nonprofit companies, and community health insurers. Generally, private insurance is voluntary, in contrast to social insurance programs, which tend to be compulsory. In some countries with universal coverage, private insurance often excludes many health conditions which are expansive and which the state healthcare system can provide. For example, in the United Kingdom, one of the largest healthcare providers is Bupa, which has a long list of general exclusion, even if it is the highest coverage policy, most of which are routinely provided by the National Health Service. In the United States, dialysis treatment for end-stage renal failure is generally paid for by the government and not the insurance industry. Persons with privatized Medicare, Medical Advantage are the exception and most get their dialysis through their insurance company. But persons with end-stage renal failure cannot generally buy Medical Advantage plans. The Planning Commission of India has also suggested that the country should embrace insurance to achieve universal health coverage. General tax is usually currently used to meet the essential health insurance requirements of all people. Now, for the most case, we have healthcare is going to go up. And in a lot of cases, with the aging demographics of the population, it's going to be a larger part of our, tax and our benefits. But the thing is, somebody's going to come in here and talk about an equal rights amendment for healthcare for all, make it free for all. That also means that we're going to have to somehow figure out a way to pay for a free benefit, which basically will mean that it's basically going to mean a lot more of an increase in taxes. Now, I'm not against free health care, but at the same time, we have to pay for it. There is always a trade-off between the public good and the tax rates at which we're taxed. I would like to get in very briefly to some of the, we've talked a little bit about the healthcare funding mechanism. Now, what I'd like to hear is just basically your stories over the next few minutes. Take up to 3 or 4 minutes and tell me, what do you think of our American healthcare system? And then maybe we'll conclude, before we get into our Q&A and rebuttal, with a little bit about how we can fix this healthcare system. So I'm opening up the microphone right now to anybody who wants to talk about their association with the system. And I would particularly like to focus on solutions as well. So let's get to it.
All right.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Attaboy, Tim.
Attaboy.
Well, it's just basically reading off a Wikipedia page, but...
Don't tell your
No, it was very good. Okay, my healthcare, I work for a library, and they pay for it. It's pretty boring.
Yeah, but you're paying
I pay
monthly or whatever.
every 2 weeks. I pay like $100 a month, and they keep negotiating with the company. I know. I think they paid like $800,000 for a year for 50 people,
You never got your
but they
hot
keep
water?
the coverage keeps going down a little bit every year, every time they negotiate, because we just can't afford more. So, and there are a few people with cancer, and so they raised the premiums and the rates, right? So, I mean, I don't know about Obamacare and health for everybody. I'm afraid of, not afraid of it, but I don't want to really find out about it because, well, I mean, if I have to find out about it, I will. But as long as I have my job, I will let my job pay for health insurance. Politically, it's difficult. I mean, the Democrats got it passed in the Congress, and it wasn't easy. And Republicans are trying to repeal Obamacare. Medicare, when I become 70 years old, I'm 60 now. Medicare is going up, and there are more and more people on Medicare. But I mean, it's a tough political decision. Thank you.
Hey. Outstanding. Encore.
Yeah.
Hey.
Thank you, Dan.
Let's hear your story about
Oh, no,
healthcare.
you want to hear my story.
Here you go, my friend.
Back in 1960, I joined the Socialist Party.
Whoa.
And one of my jobs was to type a pamphlet by a friend of mine, David Tucker, a Harvard grad, on
Yes.
socialized medicine. And I found out a few things. For instance, there were, I think, 2 industrialized countries in the world that did not have some form of socialized medicine.
Oh, yeah, you know,
That-
Sweden
Those
can-
were
did not.
the Union of South Africa and the United States of America. Well, the Union of South Africa is not noted for,
Oh, I would like some dessert.
especially in 1960, it wasn't noted for equality or its health services for that matter, even though they had done some open heart surgery and that was a bit of a novelty, but and so I wondered, so what were the costs? And apparently the costs for health care in America were about twice that of the health care services in Great Britain, which served all the people in Great Britain. More recently, we heard here in the College of Complexes from the Billheimers.
I'm gonna look.
Old Billheimer passed away last year, but he benefited from health services in Britain. He was a Chicagoan, by the way. Went over there during the war and met a Yorkshire lass who was very active in the Labor Party. And she told us about how healthcare in the 40s, the National Health Service, transformed Britain.
Just for a minute.
People who didn't have dentures and had to eat mush, gum their food, suddenly got dentures and could eat whole meals. And the people who wouldn't go out either at night or during the day because they couldn't read street signs because of their poor vision, got glasses and were part of the workforce again. They could go out, they could go shopping, they could go to the doctor, and they would have regular appointments every year to see medical service that would evaluate their general health, and if there needed to be preventive action or they had a problem, they would hear about it from their physician. But they could choose their own physician within a range. After all, they wanted to have health care for everybody, so little villages and towns that were not served before got a doctor, a medical service, a clinic, and the health of the population improved enormously, and the longevity of their population went up, and it was not, they got the better medical care for less money than the U.S. was paying, and better health. Their infant mortality rates went down. And, it's sort of too bad that the only way we get an extension of healthcare services is by cozying up to private insurance companies and rewarding them by getting people to go through hoops to choose one plan that can be changed in the next year or so. Anytime the company decides to change their pharmaceutical benefits or whatever, it's too bad that the private insurance companies have been bought off by Obamacare, but because we really need a single-payer system where everybody pays and everybody gets services, and the health care is preventive, and you don't put off going to the doctor because you're scared of the fees that you might have to pay, and you don't have to live in fear that some major medical problem is going to bankrupt your family and take your kids out of school and so on. So that, I guess, is one reason everybody in any industrial country in this world has, and some that aren't, have some sort of government supported healthcare system.
Yay!
Yeah, boy, Bram.
Bram does bring up a real interesting point.
I have a question
Okay,
for you.
all right.
Why do you think America does not, well, do you think, let me put it another way. Do you think that America, USA, has a responsibility to be like every other industrialized country in the world? Like all European countries?
I'm gonna put it like this.
Okay.
At one time, you used to have to buy fire insurance for your home. You used to have to buy police protection for your home. And one of the big things they came up with in the 1860s was the universal coverage for fire, paid professional police department. The other thing that has also been around for many, many years is universal education for children. And in another sense, I think myself that government in some form should provide some kind of health care for its citizenry. In a sense, we do have that now, because if you walk into any emergency room, you will get care. Whether it bankrupts you or not, or whether it's there, you're going to get care. And the thing is that, you know, in a sense, we have mandated universal coverage to a large degree by the emergency room, and that is how many people get their health care. They wait until the last minute, and it's probably the most expensive way to do it. I would much rather see a way of doing some kind of preventative health care, because it is a lot cheaper, it is a lot bigger way of doing it. But the thing is figuring out how to pay for it. Do we do it and do it by taxes, user fees, or the way we're doing it in this country now through Obamacare, through a public-private partnership? I would like to hear a couple of people who maybe have some insurance issues and what they've gone through, or perhaps maybe with Medicare, Medicaid. If we can have somebody get up here and maybe tell one of their medical horror stories, or maybe why they're pleased with the present system. Come on up. We would like to see somebody come on up and just tell us a little bit about your medical stories. And we'd like to hear you. We'll give you a little bit of time to take care of this.
Aye, Gene.
Come on up.
They just come to eat.
Got a story, Larry?
Well, I've told my story repeatedly. I worked a long time, about 35 years, most of it for the state. I had insurance as a state employee. When I retired, I got health care and dental care. So, do I have any problems? Almost none that I don't bring on myself. So I got dental care and health care and some on the prescription drugs. So the question I've got is, why don't the rest of you have what I got? What makes me better than you? The answer, nothing. I think we've got a stupid system. I remember it's 10 years old now, but Sick Around the World told about 4 or 5 plans that people have in different countries. It was Switzerland, Taiwan, United Kingdom, and one other or 2 others that I can't remember, but they were all better than ours. Of course, I am a privileged character. I got what they got. But as far as how you pay for it, well, of course, everything costs money. You tax people, and you have a better system. Right now, we got a system that's based on fees, rather than hiring a doctor or saying, hey, this is how much you're going to get. Right now, the more times they can have you in, the more money they make. This is a stupid system. It's also, Obamacare is basically based on insurance. And insurance is a system to grab your money and put it in the hands of the wealthy. So if this is what you want, this is what we got, you ought to be happy with it, but we are not anywhere near the best in the world. We're way down the line. I remember the president of Switzerland, they asked him the question, has anybody in Switzerland gone bankrupt because of medical expenses? And he had opposed the system when it went in. He had opposed the system when he went in. What he said was, what? That would be That would be a disgrace if someone went broke. So anyway, we got another speaker, maybe a different point of view.
Let's let this guy go first, and then we'll get to our main speaker.
Cowboy James.
Our major speaker of the day has just arrived.
Let's give him a few minutes to get settled, and we'll get him started. Okay. Let's hear your story, and then we'll get into our main speaker.
All right, I just want to give another perspective.
While he's gathering
A lot of people
forces,
are up here talking about things that are negative to me as far as health is concerned. The mindset of being ill. All right. My thing is, I wake up in the morning and I go on the lakefront and I meditate, and I bring the most beautiful energy within myself. I start my day off with something that feels wonderful, that polarizes me, that tunes me to nature, that tunes me to the beauty that is possible that everyone has within them. I don't focus on things that are negative, and I have a number of elderly people which Sid knows about. One of them is 89 years old and another one is 94 years old. Okay? I do studies and do research, and there's something that's in the medical profession that talks about chromosomes and how the tips of the chromosomes have something that's called telomeres on them. These telomeres, when you measure them, at conception you have 15,000 telomeres. At birth you have 10,000. At death you have 5,000. They can measure the telomeres and tell you how long you have to live. Also in the research, it shows that the lack of, or where you are with the telomeres determines which illnesses you have. There is a product that has, it's called product B, that stops telomeres from you having less of them, okay? I've also done research, and they had the U.S. government contracted an Italian American to stop cancer. He used 20,000 Gauss magnets to 200,000 Gauss magnets, and he was able to prevent cancer. And he also has research that at 65 years old, he can reverse a person back to 35 years old with the study. Now, if you do research and you look for something positive in your life, you can attract it. It's based on your intention. I have a magnet that has 14,000 Gauss, and I use it on the 89-year-old person and the 94-year-old person.
Do you have with you?
I have it.
Okay.
I don't want to. I'm just giving you some ideas that are positive. Okay. Now, every time I get up to talk, somebody tells me I'm taking.
No, it's just.
All right.
We want to.
So that's why I don't get up here and say stuff.
Okay.
For that very reason. All right. That's it.
No. We were just trying to keep the time. Yes. If you. Let's get to our main speaker, and then we'll get into rebuttals.
Tell me when you're ready.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker.
Sid,
Every time I say something, somebody, you or
Sid,
the other
call us.
stop talking.
All right. Very brief.
Well, okay. What I think it is, to a large degree, is in these other countries, like you take Scandinavian countries, you have about 85% of the workers in unions. And that's very important, because the unions are the most progressive of all groups, and they push for progress. In the United States, we once had about 35% in unions. Now it's anywhere from 8 to 10% or something like that. So there's no clout there. And then you have the 1% that are making tremendous profits. And one of the reasons they make these profits is because they're charging you so much, especially in the so-called
Okay.
health industry, which is actually the sickness industry, that make millions and millions of dollars a year by being the heads of the corporation. So a tremendous amount of money is taken away from us to give to these heads of these corporations. Another thing, he said, where are we going to get the money? Well, the money could come from taxes that the rich aren't paying.
No thanks.
That's one thing.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, just a couple more months. Another thing is, we're subsidizing the oil industry, and we're subsidizing a lot of big businesses. Like, for instance, the oil industry has to get the oil from another country and take it back to the United States. So we
And you're
have...
also engaging in time theft right now for our speakers, so let's
Okay,
get to
just a
it.
few minutes.
No,
Oh,
no,
just
no,
this.
we got it.
Just this. Wait just a minute.
Take another minute.
Yeah, so they're taking money from us to protect the shipping lanes by using U.S. warships to guard these oil tankers that are going around the world. There's plenty of money, it's just there's not enough pressure from below more than anything else.
Let's thank our,
Our speaker.
okay, we got one brief, we got one.
Belated, but
I enjoy what you were
prepared.
saying.
Okay, Ron, we have one brief comment from this audience member, very short and fast.
Aris Yanibas.
Good gewalt.
Go ahead.
My statement is the following. Do citizens of the United States consider it a right to have health insurance, or do you to have health care, or do you think that it is a privilege? Do you think that you have the right to have health care, or do you think it is a privilege?
Good question.
Yes, thank
Very
you,
good question.
Renata. The answer is partly that the people have not passed a requirement for health care, except, in an emergency, emergency rooms have to treat the patient at their doorstep, or they get sued. All right?
Yeah, but you
but
have
we will
people
hear
that
more
are dying
about
in the
it
street.
from and no, it's not necessarily free. You get charged. My wife was recently in an accident with me, and she got a bill from Northwestern Hospital for $913, and her private insurance declined to pay. They hope that the car insurance will pay for it. All right.
Let's welcome our speaker.
So the lawyers will fight it out.
Welcome, speaker.
Thank you for your hospitality. Aristides Prokopiou Yanibas, that's what I was baptized. But in USA, I'm Aris Frank Yanibas. Because when my dad came here in 1905, they didn't want to pronounce Procopius. My grandfather put him the shining shoes that stayed in Jackson in his little shoe shine parlor. So my father, Greek hillbilly from the Appalachian side of Greece, south of Athens and north of Sparta. Actually, 99% of us Greeks in Chicago are Greek hillbillies, all that in 40. And 75% of these guys came jumping the boat. They didn't even have a passport when they came here. I know, but I don't want to give any names. Sometimes they're our best friends, our relatives, by marriage or so. It's a humbling experience to come here. College of Complexes. I've been coming here since Slim Brundage down at Grand and Clark. I don't know if anybody remembers that.
St. Regis Hotel.
We were there.
Yeah, what was the name of the hotel?
St. Regis
Hey,
Hotel.
hey, Sid's your first name, huh?
Yeah.
You said, you know something? That was my first home in Chicago when we came here. See, after we got off the boat, we went to Flint, Michigan for 2 years, and then we came to Chicago. My father was washing dishes in Flint, Michigan. He came to wash dishes here in Chicago. And he lived to be 90, and he died right down here at Foster and Kimball in a small one-room bedroom apartment where my mother and my father lived. And my grandfather was here back in the 19th century, but we were all born in Greece. My grandfather, my father, and me. He used to go back and get my grandmother pregnant and then come back here because he liked Chicago, my grandfather, Aris Yanibas, because he found here easy money and easy women. See, back in the village of about 200 or 300 people, you can't hide over there. You know, they know what time you leave the village, what time you come back, who you went to see, who you come back with, or they know everything. It's like they don't have any telephones, they don't have any telegraph, but they knew everything. So over here in Chicago, he could get lost among the 75 or 100 nationalities here, and there was.
You mean you're not a Latvian?
Who?
You sound like Aris Yanibas, really Latvian, like Aris Yanibas, like different accent.
Well,
but
Yanibas I found about 4 or 5 years ago. It's not a Greek name.
Yeah,
although
like
you know
Latvian.
it's Turkish. It's Yanibashi. Bashi means head.
Oh, yeah.
So Yani, very educated Turkish people told me they know more. No, it's not Yani, it's Yani. Actually, literally, you know, there's a Gojambashi is the chief, and second to the chief, like a vice president, is a Yanibashi. So I'm like a vice president in the Turkish nobility, or whatever you want to call it. I was still Greek hillbilly, you know.
Back to Turkey.
My best days that I remember in life was living, by the way, you can stop to interrupt me, and some of you gentlemen that spoke before, if you got something to say, I apologize, I didn't come earlier. I'm always late. I was late to my wedding, I was late to everything. I was late getting born, when I was born.
You are on Greek time.
That's it, on Greek time, well, it's usually about an hour or two late behind American time.
why you do this? Why you so why?
Because
Well,
it's on Greek time.
You know, we're a bunch of, you know, you say you could take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. We never had any civilized ways of keeping time or nothing like that. We were just a bunch of hillbillies, you know, like the Mexican guy, he doesn't keep track of time. He says, mañana, we'll take care of it, you know. That's the way we are back in the old country, too. Except now things are much different. It's really sad over there.
An amendment to the Constitution?
Well, that is definitely what is needed, and I've studied this matter for years and decades, and from my own experience. See, first of all, I try to make it easy, $10,000 as a lawyer. I saw a law advertisement in Chicago Daily Law Bulletin, which is like the Wall Street Journal of Chicago lawyers. It's the oldest legal newspaper, I think maybe in the United States. But I saw an advertisement for a big college health department, which has a magazine, health magazine, and they say, send us some famous person donated $10,000 every year, I guess for, I don't know how many years, but he said, I did $10,000 from this fund to the person who writes the best article. Me, I sat down day and night, and I paid a couple $100 to this woman because I know how to type, but I don't know how to put it on the computer. So she typed it for me in a computer 20 years ago, and I lost. But the guys that won it were a couple of law experts on health law. Now these guys were from Cincinnati, I think. But you see, there's one thing. Everything is industry. Health is an industry. And so Uh, I wrote an article, which I have not published. It took me 2 years to write this. It's 1 page. And the reason that we have these problems with our medical system is that it goes back to 1945 and the year 2010. And, excuse me. That's okay. The VA gave me a good pair of glasses that were worth $160, but I misplaced them. I got about 10 of these for $1 each at the dollar bill store. So they work just as good, by the way. So, this, I say, never in the annals of modern history, I'm making a comparison how Soviet Russia responded to the deadly World War II experience compared to USA, Russia and Greece in 2010. See, never in history has any society suffered economic damage of such magnitude. And after they defeated the Germans with reluctant support from the so-called allies like USA and Britain, who hated communists more than they hated the Soviet Russia, the Russians celebrated victory as a mortally wounded nation with more than 27 million dead.
Here.
27, I repeat, 27.
Thank you, my
In
friend.
fact, they think it might be 30 or 35 million, but they haven't
You can take out $3.
statistics finalized yet. I think in London where they,
No, I gotta let you do that, sir. I
Oh,
can't take it. Thank you, sweetheart.
with millions maimed and disabled in a vast continental area equidistant, like from New York to Colorado, with any buildings left standing. You know, we say we're in an economic crisis. This is no economic crisis. This is a self-inflicted wound like September 11. This is self-inflicted economic crisis. The rich people steal all the money, and so they have a justification to create wars in a time of peace and bring misery and poverty in a time of plenty. This is their agenda. It's a global, not decades or centuries, it's a millennial agenda of the 1% against the 99%, and we're the 99%. So before the blood dried that year in 1945, Russia faced an even more existential, serious threat from the leader of the free world, President Harry Truman. Because after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Soviet Russia was his favorite target for nuclear annihilation. And just a few months ago, I don't buy all these newspapers because it's expensive, there was an article in a book review in the Wall Street Journal, a woman by the name of, I think, Ann Jacobson, S-E-N, and she's a historian. She
It went through.
wrote
I
a
didn't fill in it, so you have to do it.
book, which we gotta go find in the library. It should be everywhere now. It's very serious, because in that book, she has documentation that Harry Truman immediately in 1945, just as soon as the war ended, they had arranged to bring to the USA 1,600 Nazis. Now these Nazis were the top chemists, the top biological warfare experts, the top nuclear experts, in order to prepare for a all-out war against Russia in 1952. See, and we used to think the crazy Russians, they are paranoid and all that they hate the West. Well, this is what the West was cooking up for them. And then there's another book review that they had, an obituary a couple of months ago of a man who died. He was Hitler's most devoted bodyguard, and he died like in his early 90s, at over 90 years old, I think. He said he was a handsome, muscular guy, and he was Hitler's bodyguard until right up to the end, and then they all ran away because they figured it was the end. And he wrote in this book, that which is a published book now. Oh, see, they bring these things out after everybody's dead. That Hitler was waiting until the 2 weeks before this man departed from Hitler, when the whole Nazi regime was dissolving and breaking apart, that he was still hoping that the United States and England would come on his side and turn the Russians all the way back and destroy Russia and exterminate the godless communists from the face of the earth. So they must have had some kind of communication if this man who was for 3, 4, 5 years right next to Hitler, he must have known some communications between the so-called allies of Russia and the Nazis. So this is what they call realpolitik, which I don't know what it means, but it sounds intellectual. You know, it means realistic politics, I guess. So it's in the real world. You know, they don't teach us this stuff in Sunday school, and they don't teach us this stuff in college. In fact, in college, they brainwash us. You know, I'm one of the dummies that went to college, and even after that, grad school. And I tell you something, when I was in grammar school, I graduated right over here by Dante School, a block away from the Hall House, Halstead Street in Harrison. There was about 2 blocks south of Harrison and about 1 or 2 blocks east of Halstead, Dante Elementary School. When I graduated elementary school, I was a A student. When I went to high school, at Austin High School, I was a B student.
Thanks. You're welcome, young man.
And then, when I went to college out in Iowa, I went to one of these so-called prestigious colleges. I don't want to say the name because it's grossly overrated, like all colleges are. And so in grade school, I was an A student. In high school, I was a B student. In college and in graduate school, I was a C student. So I'm living proof that the higher up you go in academic education, the dumber you become. If I would have stopped
Bravo.
and go out and found an honest job in after 8th grade, like some guys did, I would have been way ahead. Then I became a lawyer, and I will tell you guys a funny joke that this Greek told me up here at Lincoln that he had a big supermarket at Lincoln and Tui. He said, you know, Yanibas, what he says, Sarada Chronia Duleve, Pada Carpoforos, Ta Prota Deca Timios, Ketala Vigivoros, which if anybody knows Greek here, I'll translate. It's pretty simple. It's a story, it says about a lawyer, no, a man who worked 40 years and he was always productive. The first 10 years he worked in honest labor, and the other years he worked as a lawyer. So I always wanted to go into a job where you work little and make a lot of money. Unfortunately, I never made it. So right now, I got my Social Security.
Get out of here.
I got a house, a car, 1 wife.
Only
So
one?
I survived 4 years of the Nazi Holocaust in Greece. I survived 7 years in the Chicago slums, and I survived 39 years of marriage to the same woman. I'm not kidding, you know, marriage is the most deadly connection you can make in life. 62% of the murders in life come out of married husband killing the wife, or a wife killing the husband. In fact, I had a case like that. A woman paid these 2 guys to kill her husband, and turned out that the guy at the factory that her son had found the next con to find them 2 killers, they were 2 policemen, but they were the 2 sickest looking guys. I mean, one guy, he looked like a sick accountant or something, you know, one of the little short guys. You say, what the hell, this guy be? But he was a policeman, and so was the other guy. And the other cops were in the car, and they came in. took her away, but Patrick Tewitt, the famous criminal lawyer, got her out of the criminal case, and I handled her divorce. And I learned a lot, in that case. So the thing in life, see, you learn from your experiences. And me, my life started medically January 10, 1938. That was my first medical experience. But this was in a little village of 200-300 people in the mountains of Greece. And the thing is that we had no electricity, no running water, no indoor plumbing. In fact, we didn't even have outdoor plumbing. There was nothing. This is primitive life. No doctor. The nearest doctor was about 15 miles away. And,
But you have a beautiful countryside.
well, it's
Greece
beautiful.
is beautiful.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, it is so beautiful, that is so true. Yeah.
And it's nice and warm.
And Greece has a lot of advantages, and unfortunately, there's a big crisis over there now that's manufactured. It's not by accident, it was done on purpose, just like the crisis we have here. And so the woman that delivered the babies in the village was Evgenia. You've never heard the word eugenics, Okay, eugen means good, and genics, or genealogy, means birth. So she was properly named Eugenia, Evgenia. So she was an illiterate woman, but she delivered the babies in the village and maybe surrounding village.
You're welcome,
And
dear.
she never did a cesarean. And so this is the thing. In those days, there were no doctors,
Thank you, my friend.
there were no medicines, nothing.
Some more coffee?
So that's how, I'm sure Abraham Lincoln, Socrates, Alexander the Great, they were all born the same way. None of them were born in the hospital. But then I got a bad experience in the hospital. And that was when my daughter was born in 1980. See, all this is very relevant to my attitude about doctors and why I hate the SOBs. In fact, when I walk in a doctor's office, I feel like saying, I told this to my wife, this guy is not your friend, and he's not your doctor, he's your enemy. Because he has a conflict of interest against you. The more sick you are, and the more surgical interventions he does, the more money he makes, and he doesn't care if you die. The first thing he cares about making money. The second thing is afraid of medical malpractice suit. And the third thing, and I learned that word recently, so I'll use it, primary is making money, concern of the doctors. Secondary is avoiding a medical malpractice suit. And tertiary, I bet most of you guys ever heard of that word, it means third. The third concern of the doctor is your health. So you come number 3 in the doctor's concern. And I was at Northwestern, VA hospital over there by Lakeside, the big hospital. Like my dad, my brother, went to VA hospital. And so I asked the doctor over there that was treating a young resident, I said, Doctor, I believe in national health insurance and free medical care like they have in Canada and every other country in the world except the U.S. And what do you think about it? This guy was really shocked. He was about 30 years old. And, he was a handsome Latino or Italian guy. And he did just a little minor surgery on my finger, like a nail problem. And he was so expert. This is the kind of doctor you would admire. But then I hated the SOB. Do you know why I got to hate him? Because I told him, I think medical care should be a basic human right. But he said, no, he says, I don't agree. I said, I don't have medical insurance. I got a house, I'm paying the mortgage, and that's all the assets I have, except a little money. And I said, I can't afford health insurance for me and my family. He says, well, you should sell your house and buy medical insurance. So I said, Doctor, let me ask you. He was from Northwestern Medical School.
It's crazy.
And I said, are you the only one that thinks like that? Or how about the other medical residents that graduated medical school at Northwestern? He says that we all think that same way.
Okay.
Everybody thinks like I feel. How much time do we have?
I'm just wanting to get into questions real quick to you.
Okay.
Since you were late, we had to kind of condense your time down as a speaker, so we're just asking you to wrap up real quick.
In about how long?
In about maybe 3-4 minutes, if you can.
Oh, that's okay. Well, excuse me, I'm gonna finish in about 3-4 minutes and then you'll open, it'll be open for questions. So then, when my wife had the baby, we took her to the same hospital where about 30 years before, 35 years before, I was operated for my tonsils, tonsillectomy, which was an unnecessary operation. But the doctor, who I still love that man, you know, he was an old family doctor. He'd go across town for $5 in the middle of the night. But he did a tonsillectomy on me. I was around 13 years old. Now, in the same hospital is where my baby was born, Columbus Hospital. And, you know, in those Catholic hospitals, you think they care about human life. Well, that's number 3 of their concern. First is making money. Second is avoiding malpractice suits. And third is your health. And I stopped the doctors from doing a cesarean on my wife because he came in. This guy, he was so persuasive. He was from another foreign country, and he was so charming and so professional. He would work with a big clinic, and he told me, he said, we got to do a cesarean. And I said, doctor, you know, I think it's better if you go back and work 10 more hours, and then we'll talk about a cesarean. And then he looked at me like, say, what is this dummy know? Actually, I don't know nothing about babies. I never had a sister that had babies or anything. And I said, okay. He said, go and sit in the waiting room. So I'm standing in the waiting room, and about 2 hours later, I got a call. Mr. Yanibas, you have a beautiful baby daughter. So I didn't want to go home right away. 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, I got it. The car came back. Then I went back to my wife, and she says, you know, Aris, there was a nice little black lady that is on the staff over here. And she came up to me and she said, Mrs. Yanibas, I want to congratulate your husband. And she closed the door so nobody would hear her. So my wife says, how come I did all the suffering? He didn't go through all of it. But she says, yeah, but your husband saved you from a cesarean. Everybody in the hospital was talking about it. So that's why these guys do the cesareans, because they make more money and they don't care if they cut you off or even endanger your life. So that is one of the big reasons that we got to make a system where there is not a conflict of interest between your doctor and your health. And now, unfortunately, your health is of third importance after making money and fighting malpractice suits.
Okay, let's thank our speaker.
I'm sorry that you haven't gotten to your amendment. You have another 5 minutes
Okay.
to
Well,
get into that.
I have made some petitions. 20 years ago or so, I prepared some petitions, and a friend of mine gave them to 5 or 10 different friends of his. He was a television repairman, and he gave them to these restaurants like down in near Rush Street and near North Side, and it was amazing. He gave me back the signatures of a couple of hundred people. People from Lakeshore Drive, people from Glencoe, people from the richest suburbs. They signed a petition that they believe in the free system of medical care, the Canadian style system. And so this is the basis of my petition, that every American citizen is entitled to totally free medical care, totally free denture, so they don't have to pay $3,000 like I did last year. So they don't have to pay for eyeglasses, so they don't have to pay anything. Medicine, doctors, hospital is totally free. That's what we deserve. And we pay such enormous taxes that we, more than anybody else in the world, we deserve free medical care. But you know, our money is going to people like this big military contractor. I don't call him a military contractor. I call him, we are POWs. We are prisoners, not of war, prisoners of the warmongers. And we're not, you know, like they have these flags, post offices and that, MIA, missing in action. There's nobody missing in action. This is for us. We are the manipulated and intimidated Americans. That's what MIA stands for. Manipulated, intimidated Americans and prisoners of the warmongers. So these guys, I'm gonna finish with this. You know, where's our money going? They say it costs millions of dollars every day to kill people who cannot defend themselves in Iraq and in Afghanistan and other countries. And this heroic man, David Brooks, not the big journalist David Brooks, but another David Brooks in Long Island, New York, about 5 years ago, he had a birthday party for his daughter. And how much do you think he spent for his birthday, for the birthday party for his daughter? $10 million. That SOB, that's our money. I worked 60 years since I was 15 years old. I've been working and paying taxes and declaring every dollar I make. And that guy can spend, it was a 2-day event. He had all the rich people and foreign and domestic big shots and aristocrats, biggest bands in the country were playing, so that he could give his daughter a $10 million birthday party. But you know what? Here, I'm finishing with this. Why do these rich SOBs get away with that? You know why? Because they hate the working people. But you know what the others, it took me 76 years to figure this out. We just figured it out a couple of months ago. The working people don't hate the rich like the rich hate the working people. And that's why they're be taking our houses. Oh, I'm finishing with Obamacare. Obamacare is a trap. It took me a few months to figure it out. They're going to have two systems. When you go to get medical care, Obamacare is going to say one side is Medicare, the other is Medicaid. So he's going to say, okay, John Smith, you can buy into Medicare when you're 35, 45, 55, you don't have to wait till 65. So you buy into Medicare. See, this is good for the insurance companies. And then, when you get to be 65, they say, come on in, we want to check you out at the Social Security office. How much do you make? And you say, well, I make $1,000 Social Security, but I got about $5,000. I own a couple of buildings and I'm making rent, so I get $6,000 a month. 6 times 12, $72,000 a year. He says, okay, you're going to have to continue buying your Medicare, Mr. Smith. That's what the Obamacare is going to turn out to. It's not for the sick people or for the deserving Americans who pay taxes all their life. It's to enrich the insurance companies, the doctors, and the hospitals. So you're going to, even if you live to be 90, 95 years old, if you've got money, you're going to have to buy Medicare. And then I'm finishing with this. I worked for public aid, and that was my job for about a year, year and a half after I come out of law school. I couldn't find a job or open an office. And the second part is Medicaid. So here's Medicare that you'll have to buy all your life, as long as you got money to buy it. And here's Medicaid. Now Medicaid, the thing they do, I remember the first thing we did when somebody came and said, oh, we have a house. I used to go downtown one day a week and do a search on the real estate records. I became the top expert in finding records. It was complicated then. It wasn't like now with the computers back in 1970. And what they did, they put a lien on your house. So this is going to what's gonna be happening. So if you don't have enough money to buy Medicare, they will ask you what assets you have, and you're gonna find a lien on your house, and if you think, well, I've been working 40, 50 years for this house, I wanna leave it to my children and my grandchildren, this medical industry or the nursing home is gonna have first claim on your house. So there's gonna be, under the Obama plan, actually, this guy is just a presidential impersonator, he doesn't even know what he's doing. If they don't write it out for him, you could see the guy is, They build up a resume for him, you know, just like George Bush. Here, George Bush was an alcoholic, he was psychotic, he was a drug addict, but they made him a president. These guys are not presidents. George W. Bush II and Obama, they're presidential impersonators. So, he never read Obamacare. You think he read it?
What do you propose?
I propose that you, me, your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your friends, your enemies, all deserve totally free health care. Medicine, dentures, everything.
It doesn't exist.
Then I have a question.
Excuse me,
Who is going to?
only in this country it doesn't exist, ma'am. In other countries it exists.
Yeah, but who pays the doctor? You don't know.
We're gonna take that money from Mr. David Brooks. The government's gonna pay him. Just like they paid David Brooks to give him billions of dollars to do a $10 million birthday party. How come they can pay David Brooks billions and they can't pay our doctors and our hospitals?
Liana.
Okay, so I have question, actually two. First, I agree what you said, 50%, but 50% I disagree. Okay, this is not socialistic country, so to speak, actually, capitalistic country. Fine, if people, I just thought for a moment, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. If people, like you said, struggling, they would like to have free health care. Who will pay to the doctor? Government don't care.
The government, like, who pays for you? You know, excuse me, ma'am, if you know anybody on Medicare?
They really, you're right, they really need to pay for malpracticing, like big money they pay. As a matter of fact, my, one of the distant relatives, he struggled to study for exam here to be a doctor, medical doctor, because he was in Russia, a medical doctor for more than 5 years. So now he is a doctor, okay, and a very respectful doctor.
So what's your question?
So what I try to say, we talked on the phone, and he said he paid big amount for malpractice. Where he will get money from, like
I
now,
will
from
tell you
insurance company and from patients. I agree what you said, but it's Obamacare. It's also not solution.
This guy is a despicable, money-hungry SOB.
Yeah, then what?
And bring him here and I will tell him,
Okay,
like I told this Russian doctor down here at supermarket, he told me, he said, hey, I don't agree with this.
Solution.
Oh, let me tell you, ma'am, that guy, he's not satisfied to make $1 million a year. He wants to make $5 million a year.
I know.
And you know why? Because his wife won't let him. He says, look, all the other doctors are millionaires. What the hell are you doing, you dumb schmuck? You're not making $5 million a year. You're only making $1 million a year. Let me finish with this. But that guy, he got a free medical education in Russia. That ungrateful person, he should send back $100,000 to the poor people of Russia and say, thank you, Russian people. You sacrificed to make me a doctor free. In America, I would spend $200,000-300,000. And the ungrateful SOB, the despicable doctor,
Actually, you're right.
he's not satisfied that he's making $1 million a year.
Bravo! Encore!
Bring him here. I will disgrace him in public.
It makes sense, yeah. It makes sense, you're right.
Okay, I just want to make an observation is that, as I understand it, Medicaid is, you can get that before you're age 65, normally. But, and it turned out now, with this big recession, when unemployment went way up, lots of people applied, and there's lawyers that can get you Medicaid by, playing tricks and convincing them that you're disabled or something. But I bet if employment goes up, and unemployment goes down, there'll be a lot less people applying for Medicaid because
Well,
They're really not disabled. I mean,
the employment figures and all that is all manipulated. Unemployment, employment,
Yeah.
spending, saving,
Yeah.
inflation. That's all done by these guys that work for the 1%. You know, the top economists, the top lawyers, the top accountants. These are the guys that figure out how to make us poor and make them rich.
Yes, Tim Bolgers.
Okay, you came in here tonight expecting to hear about free health care for all. There was no constitutional amendment, no facts and figures. You came in late because of the Greek mindset and time. What am I to do to think about what I call a pie in the sky proposal? I know there's other countries that have, quote, free health care, but you're still going to have to pay for that health care. Where do you propose to pay for it? How are you going to pay for the health care? You don't want to tax the rich. You don't want to tax the poor. You want to keep everybody thing, but you want to provide a benefit. But it's still going to cost money. Where's the revenue going to come from?
Well, we're paying taxes already.
Yes, we know, but you're going to have to pay a lot more higher taxes to get what you want to pay for here now.
I got another solution. I figured this out in my 75th year. You know, we all borrow money, credit cards, car loans, college loans, home loans. Everybody borrows money. Well, what we should do is nationalize the banks. Those bankers should not be making $20, $30, $40 million a year salaries, and the bank owners should not be walking away and becoming billionaires, not millionaires, billionaires.
Right.
So, in other words, we set up a simple governmental bank system. See, under the Constitution, you cannot take their money without giving them fair compensation. So we say, okay, Mr. A, B, C, D, all you guys became billionaires, keep your billions, but you're not going to rip us off anymore, because my government that is concerned about me is going to open in every neighborhood, in everywhere, in farmlands and cities, and we're going to have a system of very simple, uniform, no tricks, no confusing language, standard United States loan documents. There'll be 1 or 2 pages, and it'll be uniform everywhere, and they won't be able to pull any tricks on you. And what will they do with the money? All that interest, there is trillions of dollars. That will go not to those rich SOBs, it will go for paying of our medical bills, and there's going to be money left over.
Yes. Wesley King.
Didn't Lincoln and Kennedy and Gaddafi try and adjust what the banks are doing to the populace, and the same thing happened to all 3 of them?
Well, you know, you're so right, my friend, because these guys, they don't play by the rules that everybody is supposed to play by, because for these guys, like the doctors, human life is of 3rd importance, in order of importance. They kill people all over the world because they make millions and billions of dollars, and they're in Afghanistan and they're going to stay there, and they're in Iraq and they're going to stay there, because as long as they're opium in Afghanistan, which is the most lucrative business, one bank, one of the biggest banks last year, they laundered $900 million 1 year from the opium market. And then they are going to be in Afghanistan as long as there's opium and trillions of dollars to be made, and they're going to be in Iraq as long as there's trillions of dollars to be made from the oil. See, before, when Saddam was there, like you mentioned, maybe he got 25%, but the other 75% went for the people, for medical care, free college, a 1 month paid vacation. They got all the benefits. Gaddafi was doing the same thing. But see, those guys have to be killed because they don't have in their countries 2 things. They don't have the International Monetary Fund and Goldman Sachs in their country, and they don't have NATO military bases in their country. So that's why they're going to wipe out the government of Iran and also the government of Cuba and the government of Venezuela, so they can privatize all the wealth of the world.
But Gaddafi was making a international bank for Africa. That's what he was doing.
Who?
Gaddafi.
What did he do?
He was making an international bank for all the African nations.
Well,
that's all I was going to say.
if you notice the kind of governments they overthrow, starting with Mossadegh in '54 in Iran, and also with Gaddafi and Saddam, and now in Syria, the Assad government, these governments have two things in common. They are popular governments and they are stable
I'm going to get
governments.
you a fresh cup.
But they are not run by Wall Street and the bankers of London. That's why they have to be killed and humbled and destroyed. There is I'm going to finish with 5 words. There's a methodology to their crimes against humanity. Number 1, it starts with vilification. They start to vilify the country, like now they're doing Russia and China.
Let me get you more soup.
Next step, vilification, they go into isolation. They use all the pressure of all the banks and all the governments of the world to isolate and to impose sanctions on them. So from vilification to isolation, and the third is invasion. See, because those are such popular governments, the government of Gaddafi was so popular, they couldn't overthrow it. They had to bring in 25 countries, among them Greek war criminals from Greece and Italy and Spain and France and all the NATO countries to kill a country of 6.5 million people, which was about the size of Cook County. So they cannot overthrow the countries like in Syria. Those domestic collaborators and traitors against the popular government of Assad, they cannot prevail. That's why I heard a couple of days ago Susan Rice telling Charlie Rose on TV, they say if all else fails, if we cannot get this man overthrown in Syria, we might have to ask our allies to have some kind of joint military action in order to overthrow Assad. So these guys want to privatize the whole world. And if there's a half a dozen countries that are still free, their days are numbered.
David Travis has a question.
Yes, Mr. Yanibas.
Yanibas. Is my name on that book there, or that? Because I didn't find it. Excuse me.
No, it's not on the program.
Oh, okay, yeah, because
That's from
I
last
looked
month.
today, I stopped by and I couldn't find it. Pardon me, forgive me, because you saw my name there. You wrote it. Thank you for having the courtesy to remember my name. Excuse me, I apologize for interrupting you.
May I ask my question now?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Take all your time you need.
My question is, are there any rich people that aren't SOBs?
I never met one. You know, I'm a lawyer, and I never met an honest rich person. I never met an honest businessman. You know, and I say there's nothing more fake than a businessman's smile. I'm going to tell you, my own brother, I said, Pete, let's open a little business together. I was naive. He was not as smart as me. He dropped out of 9th grade, but he was more cunning. You know, he was streetwise. I said, let's open a little restaurant, a fast food place or something. And he said to me, Aris, you know something, we better not, because I'm going to be cheating you. I'm telling you right now. He's not going to go for 50%. He's going to be cheating me on the profits. So he told me outright, he says, we should not go into business together. And I'm going to tell you guys something that I bet you nobody knows this. When you go to your beauty shop or to the barber shop, your barber is ripping you off too. Everywhere you go, they're ripping you off. I'm the only guy that figured this out, because when I was a poor kid in Halsted Street, and we used to go to Skid Row, my dad used to take us to the Moeller Barber College. I bet none of you guys remember those.
Yeah.
They had one of them down at Halsted and Madison, and one in like State and Harrison. Mostly we lived at Halsted and Harrison, so we went to Halsted and Madison, and these real sharp guys would look like doctors, dressed real nice, and they cut your hair and everything. My dad used to sneak behind and say, hey, cut it high and cut it short, you know, because they didn't want to have money to pay 25 cents every couple of weeks. So what they did, they used to put an apron around your neck. And I bet you guys, it took me many years to figure that out because my barbers, they were not putting an apron around my back. Oh no, they put an apron, but they used to put a little piece of paper, a collar, so that you don't get the sweat. And the other guys,
Nice and hot, and I'll get you some more.
they get the haircut before you, and of course, same thing with the ladies and the hairdressers. To save 2 or 3 cents, so they don't have to put a collar around your neck, they put that apron, which is sweaty and slimy from other people. Maybe they have sores and stuff. Hey, check it next time you go and get a haircut. And remember Yanibas and say, hey, that old Greek SOB, he's the first one that ever told me to watch out for those goddamn crooks.
I think
and
everyone
the barbers used to be the doctors and dentists. All right.
Yeah, right.
We have come now to the question.
You're on and making
to the rebuttal period. And I would like to know how many here have rebuttal remarks to make. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Wow, oh, I'm not really rebuttal.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Go for about 7 minutes, Brom.
What?
About 7 to 8 minutes each.
You can talk
Up
about
to
anything
7
in
minutes.
rebuttal. Okay.
But Tim Bulger will remind us if we overstep.
We can do a second round. Let's thank Mr. Yanibas for showing up and speaking tonight.
If I could finish with one question, I don't know how many of you people were in favor of free medical care before I started, how many I changed over to my side, or how many I alienated and made you more against free health care, I don't know. But let me ask you this, who would pay here, just raise your hands, who would pay $20 to walk around with a t-shirt like this that says you deserve free health care? How many people I see a show of hands? Anybody will pay $20?
I wouldn't do it for free.
All right.
Well, as long as you don't get it back.
You gave me the $20,
All right, I'm gonna close out our little thing tonight
Free health care.
by simply saying that
Thank you.
we should have, I would strongly encourage our speaker next time he comes to an event like this to be a little more prepared. What I'd like to do is just briefly give a brief recent article from Forbes magazine on how to live a long life, and that still our own health care is our own responsibility. The first thing they say is to have a positive attitude. Trudy Fletcher of Quebec, Arizona, a lifetime artist, remains an innovative painter at 100 and recently had a gallery exhibition showing off her new style. She credits her creative longevity to attitude. Almost all of the centenarians we spoke to believe a positive yet realistic attitude is crucial throughout one's life and describe themselves as optimistic people. Diet. Here's diet advice you may not have heard before. Eat like it's 1960. Our centenarians were critical of today's supersized portions. The majority advised eating nutritious foods in moderation. Only 20% they ever had been in a specialized diet plan. The third thing they say is exercise. Move it or lose it. I don't leave my bedroom before doing 30 minutes of stretches. Later I walk a mile. 3 times a week I play bridge. You've got to exercise your mind as well as your body. Everyone knows that, but I wonder how many people are actually doing it. A few centenarians who successfully maintained their athleticism or gained new skills have competed in the senior games. This was done, quoted by a George Blemis. Joe Miser, 102, took up golf at 70, got pretty good and began competing in the senior games himself. The fourth thing they talk about is faith. It came as no surprise to us that almost all centenarians we spoke to said their faith has sustained them. Most believe they will be here as long as God has a purpose for them. Perhaps we here to be an example of others in hard times, says Roberta McKinney, 101, whose original home was struck by lightning and burned to the ground, as did her rebuilt house. The fifth thing is clean living. Henry Alder 101 says it's this simple: just stay out of trouble. Everyone's interpretation of that advice may vary, but many centenarians said it told us it means doing what you know is right and following your conscience. Almost 75% of the centenarians surveyed never smoked. Most of the others stopped between the ages of 40 and 70. While some never drank, most said they enjoyed an occasional cocktail or glass of wine. The number 6 thing they say that really contributes to that is a loving family. Family has a universally important to centenarians. They enjoy their roles as matriarchs or patriarchs, and many spoke of the pleasure of watching younger generations grow and flourish. One respondent undercredited her longevity to a wonderful and loving family, the good Lord, and a rum and coke every afternoon.
Hey, here.
And the 7th is genetics. All of the secrets maintained so far reflect lifestyle choices that can influence longevity to varying degrees. But genetic makeup makes a difference as well. I picked the right parents and genes, says Andy Winoski, 100. Until medical devices make us all help us work with the genes we've been dealt with. The secret is that some of us may be more prone to longevity than others. And for me, I'll add a number 8. That is volunteer. Learn a little bit about life's purpose. Try to be a nice person. And generally, live life. And for me, the biggest one for me is learn how to speak in public. Learn how to present well. Because the quality of your life depends on how much you can communicate in your life. Thank you.
Encore. I have to congratulate Tim Bolger on being prepared. It's all typed out there, and he's got a lot to say and said it succinctly. Perhaps you could get adequate training from
Toastmasters.
Toastmasters yourself.
I did belong there.
But
I guess I should get up
yeah,
there.
I have a couple of remarks to make about the presentation. It was discursive. I'm afraid that even I
Sir, I'm gonna give you your change back.
misled you by
You probably need the
talking
next.
about your Lithuanian ancestry there that you don't have. But we did find out more about your personal life than we actually needed to, though it was interesting. But we didn't find out about the mechanics or any movement to institute this amendment to our Constitution, which will provide us with the legal background for a national health care service that meets the needs of Americans. And as the world becomes more international, I don't think merely national health services are going to be adequate. We're going to have more people crossing borders, more people availing themselves of health services in more developed countries or where healthcare is more available, or particular services are more available. I mean, Americans go to Canada for hip replacements and so on, as well as Canadians coming to the United States for other healthcare services. It's a complex world, and the healthcare industry is a very complex industry. There are psychiatric services, there are dental services, there are podiatric services, there are geriatric services, there are all kinds of particular needs that are generally treated under the rubric of health care. So it's a vast industry. You know, maybe 50% of a national economy may be devoted to healthcare, particularly for aging populations such as that in Japan and the wealthier countries. All right, in Europe is importing people to work, guest stararbeiter. They do get their health care services for their guest stararbeiters, but they're a little guarded about their national citizenship, and who can blame them? You dwelt somewhat on the World War II and the destruction. I mean, the Russians really bore, as did the Poles and other countries of Eastern Europe, much of the cost of defeating the Nazis. But with all that said, that's no excuse for the, and after the liberation, I mean, the Russians liberated Eastern Europe, the other parts of Eastern Europe. Russia is European. They allowed for governments that instituted some form of government-sponsored health care. So the health of the recovering population, the victims of World War II, did better, lived longer than the previous population, the same population before the war. But that comes with industrialization, it comes with development, and development not only of healthcare services and technology, but with the kind of delivery system that was instituted under the name of socialism, even if it wasn't democratic, and workers' control was hardly what the communists instituted. In fact, their system of health care was largely attached to the enterprises people work for. So you did not have a choice of a physician or the kind of health care that you were going to get. I have nothing to say about that. Well, that's the lack of democracy anywhere, whether it's in the United States, under private ownership and control, or in the Soviet Union and its satellites, with a privately controlled state. Right. Okay. David?
7 minutes.
Good evening. I'm David Travis. Our speaker tonight, Mr. Yanibas, he didn't have a very good presentation, if in fact you can even call it a presentation at all. His practically everything that he talked about was a tirade against capitalism. In my mind, I think he's made it abundantly clear that he is a socialist. Every time he mentions the rich, it's the SOB rich. Every time he mentions big corporations, it's the SOB big corporations. He fails to mention people like Bill and Melinda Gates, who are currently spending billions of dollars to eradicate disease and hunger all over the world. There's something wrong with this mic.
Yeah, I know.
He's trying to, Bill and Melinda Gates have been spending billions trying to eradicate disease and hunger all over the world. They're under no obligation to do this. They're doing this because they want to accomplish something with their lives during their lifetimes. Mr. Yanibas, his whole thing is a tirade against capitalism. He never made any presentation. There was no content as to how he would promulgate a free medical care. And when asked about it, he said, nationalize the banks, which is a whole nother thing. Mr. Yanibas did say that he made it quite clear that he is a Greek hillbilly. And to say that you're a hillbilly is to say that, in effect, that you're an ignoramus. There was a movie called A Face in the Crowd with Andy Griffith where he said, well, I'm just a country boy. But as he gained more and more popularity, he wanted to run the whole country until he was discovered and put out. So the I'm just a country boy thing, in other words, Mr. Yanibas carved out his own little escape hatch from everything that he promulgates by saying, or advocates by saying, that I'm just a Greek hillbilly. So this way, if his nationalization of the banks did happen and get real ugly, or if his national health care came about and it got real ugly, he could always say, well, what'd you listen to me for? I'm just a Greek hillbilly. So all I can really say here is that a man like this is not to be taken seriously at all. And in closing, I will address this to Mr. Yanibas myself. You son of a dishwasher!
Yeah, boy, Dave.
Bob Yenny.
Funny. Bob Yenny here. Well, I enjoyed the speaker very much, and well, that last remark he made, I had my older sister, who is now deceased, was a Maryknoll missionary, and every time she came back on R&R, you know, a little respite from her mission duties, she had cultural shock, because this country is so materialistic, you know. And right, if you go back to more simple countries, people are more human, and so on. Now, the other thing I appreciated with the speaker, he reminded me of, well, this was kind of a medically related too. When I was in Sioux City, Iowa, I was working for a defense contractor, so I had good health insurance, and I was making I'm just starting, so I wasn't making that great of a salary. It was on the Sage Air Defense in Sioux City, and I had just gotten married. Well, my wife had been working, the wife at the time had been working at Illinois Research, And she had very good health insurance there. But when we got married, I didn't put her on my health insurance. So she got pregnant right away and had a miscarriage with twins. Well, my insurance company said, well, it's too late. You didn't have her on the policy, and her insurance wouldn't cover it either. So I had these big medical bills, including a lot of drugs, because she had like preeclampsia, so she was really a lot of things in it. And so that's in fact why back then, if you could deduct medical expenses on you could itemize them on your income tax. But when it came to drugs, you could only deduct drugs that are over 10% of your gross income. And that was the only time I've been able to deduct prescription drugs on my income tax. Now, this leads me into the other thing that he reminded me of. Under those conditions where I'm struggling, a young married man and his wife just had a miscarriage, I would go to the barber college in Sioux City, Iowa, because the haircuts were fairly reasonable. It also happened to be on kind of like the Skid Row. So all these bums would come in, and you know how these barber chairs, and they would get a shave, not only a haircut, but a shave. And they would, because maybe it was 25 or 50 cents, whatever, it wasn't very much. And those barber chairs back then were like the go to the dentist chair. They would put you all the way back. They would a steaming hot towel and put it all over your face, and all they left out was your nose. Well, you can imagine the nose that some of these bums had. They were redder than Rudolph's red nose. And when these guys would be laying there, their red nose would be getting redder and redder. All these people would be chuckling. So that was, by the way, I go to get my hair cut now for $5 on Harlem Avenue, just north of Wrightwood. So you should try that out. Now let's get into some other stuff. Now I'm just going to go into quickly, hopefully, the impact of Obamacare on me. It's not very much because I'm on a Medicare Advantage HMO, and I don't pay any premium. I have to pay some co-payments here and there. So and in fact, one of the ways Obama was going to pay for Obamacare was to take some of this subsidy, these Medicare Advantage plan. What happened was they get all the money that would normally go to their Medicare, but another $1,500 or $1,600 a year for there being an Advantage plan, and he was going to. But so far my benefits haven't gone down. In fact, now I've got a rudimentary dental benefit, vision dental benefit, and every 3 years I can spend $1,000 on hearing aids and tests and so on. So now the other thing I do, and I go to Heinz. Now one of the congressmen sent out a thing because he wants to audit Heinz to see if they're being running efficiently. And I wrote him back that I've never had any problems at Heinz. I've used them twice. Once when I first got in on my Medicare plan, they didn't have drug coverage back then, remember? So I would go there to get my prescription drugs because I was a veteran. Then eventually when they brought Part D in, I stopped going. But then again, now more recently I had AFib, and they got me on this medication, and even with the Humana Medicare HMO plan, it was like $40 a month co-payment. So I went back to the VA where I only paid $8 a month. In fact, they just sent me out. I mean, I don't have to worry about getting appointments. They sent me a letter and they said you could, call in and make an appointment. And I got an appointment to go in July. So I haven't had a problem with that. But I did have one problem at one point. I went in there one day when I was getting prescription drugs, and my regular physician, I complained about I had this kind of crusty skin on my left ear. And so she sent me down to the dermatologist. The dermatologist said, you got squamous cell cancer, we got it's squamous cell melanoma, I guess what they call it. So then they sent me down to the guy that works on that, and they had scheduled me to cut a big chunk out of my left ear. And I started looking around, and I decided I canceled the appointment, and I got some, I started to self-medicate. I found a thing called Similium in St. John's lab down in Florida that was used for mosquito bites, but it had some stuff in it that, and it cured my cancer, so it went away, so I didn't have a surgery. Okay, well, I could say a lot more, but I'll quit.
That was great.
The man talked about Bill Gates, and they had the Rockefeller Center Foundation, and they had the Carnegie Foundation. But where do these people get their money? How do they get so damn rich? By exploiting all the workers. They become millionaires, and the people that work for them become paupers. And then they put up this foundation to make them look real good after they stole everybody's money. And you say, oh, these people are really humanitarians. Look what they're doing. But where do they get their money? By exploiting, by having interest in war production and things of that nature. That's how they get their money. So this is all BS. If you go to Cuba, a little country like that, it can afford to have free medical care, socialized medical care. And it's a poor country. And it's defending itself from American imperialism that is constantly trying to overthrow it. But yet, it can give its people health care. And the same thing in Venezuela. The United States is trying to overthrow that now. They got these rich people in the street, and they're protesting against the government there. I met one of these people when I was in the North Shore Retirement Hotel. Her family came from Europe, and then after the Holocaust, they went to Venezuela, and they became rich there, and they supported the dictatorships over there. I remember I was in Venezuela, and I went on a tour of the city of Caracas. A beautiful woman, a Jewish woman, and very beautiful, looked like Miss America or something. And she was the tour guide, and she was talking about the people that lived in the hills, and she had contempt for them. And her father was in the government. And the Venezuelan government at that time was nothing but a dictatorship. You walk around Caracas, and you see all these soldiers with guns everywhere. It was nothing but a dictatorship, and the United States oil companies are running the damn place. That's what you have. And they make all this money, but they won't give anything for people to have a decent life. That's all they try to do is exploit you.
I just want to say a couple of things. There's a term called usufruct. U-S-U-F-R-U-C-T.
One is mine?
It is a term that
Thank you. Thank you.
describes what the Romans did when they would go from village to village. They would allow the villages to produce food, and their armies were supported by the excess. The excess is what they controlled. What we are under is a harvesting of our energies. Individuals that look at capitalism in such a way that they skim off the excess as far as business is concerned, and they consider an 8-hour day that another person puts in, where that person gets a certain amount from their energy that they provide to the community, and then a businessman putting in 8 hours or however many hours and justifying how he can gain more of energy of everyone else. When nature has it set up, common law, nature's law, When you go into Greece and you go into the hillside, you're looking at nature, you're getting the energy from that environment.
Right.
If you are in a house, in a structure, in the city, you're being blocked from a lot of the energy that you should be getting. You're being starved. Spiritual energy, emotional energy. What is the highest energy or emotion that you can have during the day? That is what you live off of. What is the greatest laughter that you can have during the day? What is the greatest joy that you can have during the day? If another man thinks that he is greater than you, and he starves you from your joy, is he God? We're all equal. There's no one here on this planet that can live alive, that can leave this environment unless they connect with their spirit. If you focus on the body, if you focus on wealth, all that's left. But if you focus on the highest emotion that you can create during the day, that's who you are. When you live in this moment right now, that's who you are. Not living in the past, not living in the future, but enjoying yourself right now. You create your own health. You don't need somebody else to give you health if you know how to tune yourself to the Schumann wave of this planet. 8 cycles. If you can listen to music that is not tuned to 448, but is tuned to 432, if you look that up on Google, you'll find that you're greater than all this stuff that they're talking about. I don't care if you talk about Obama, Bill Gates, or any other person. You should just be talking about yourself and your parents, your ancestry. That's where you come from and that's where you go. There's nothing greater than you in this universe. In your wildest imaginations, you don't need another man to try and take something from you based on some contract or some agreement. Some two-dimension, 3-dimension, 4-dimension. What dimension do you live in? What is your reality? Are you trying to put your reality on somebody else's mind? That's that Lucifer. That is the Romans still taking energy, harvesting you. You're being harvested. Individuals that want more power than the next man are the soldiers of that Roman brigade. The mindset itself. You can say socialism, you can say capitalism, you can use all the isms you want. It's all fear. I'm not talking about fear, I'm talking about joy. And that's the only thing you need.
Yep.
All right, if we have an open mic,
Very good, very good.
I'm gonna go one more time.
Oh, no. Outstanding.
I'm just gonna simply say this to our speaker. You know, one of the secrets of longevity, one of the secrets of being well, as I said a little earlier, and to maintain and keep commitments is make sure you show up, you know, and one of the basic tenets to most of the communications in my life are you have to show up on time. You have to be prepared for what you do. And you have to be ready to defend your views and communicate them well. Tonight, I'd like to say, you know, you weren't prepared. I just, you know, hate to see that our speaker tonight, although I know he's got some certain views, I believe should have been much more prepared. With that, hopefully we'll be scheduling in the future some more prepared speakers some more prepared things. I don't think it went as well as I'd like tonight. Thank you. We still got an open mic and we still got some time, so whoever needs to go, we can do a second round.
Okay, I didn't get a chance to give my solution.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
I'm kind of in, oh, well, I'll mention it like that.
No, that's not.
Well, I told you I'm pretty satisfied with the care I'm getting now, medical care. But the whole this healthcare reform, one of the goals is to reduce the cost. And I have to say that the Humana Medicare HMO, when I had to go to the emergency room for AFib, the hospital sent out this humongous bill. Well, the HMO went in and bargained them down. They paid about 1/4 of what these people were trying to bill.
Yeah.
So you got to really watch. Yeah, they're mainly out to get your money. But
Okay.
well, and by the way, someone was mentioning about the importance of family and so on. I think that's important. I think like well, someone was joking about having lived with a wife for 40 years. Well, actually, I'm a single man now. I'm been divorced and my ex-wife is deceased. I'm 81 years old and I'm enjoying fairly good health. But that's not typical. For a single men typically deteriorate faster than married men. So marriage is generally good for your health. But the thing that I really get worked up about is alternative medicine. There's all kinds of natural cures out there. Not all of them have been that well vetted. But and because a lot of these things, these doctors are in cahoots with these big drug companies, and they're giving you medication that you don't really need. I mean, there's alternative natural things you could do, or there's lifestyle things you should do. And I think we need to get a Medicare, a medical delivery service that will pay for a lot of these supplements, even something like multivitamins. Because a lot of the problems people have are because of poor nutrition. Maybe another thing that someone had mentioned is that stress can create a lot of physical problems. So just a simple thing like meditating or praying or something to kind of calm yourself down, because not all of us can get in, we're always going to be getting into stressful situations, but you need to deal with it so it doesn't impact your health if you want to stay healthy. So, but I think that these alternative medicines are not, there's not some drug company making big profits off these things, and they give you good health, and that's the way we need to do it. We need to get them to vet them out if they haven't been thoroughly checked out, and then again you've got the fact that different things affect people differently. So sometimes these will work for some people and not for others. But I mean we should have a medical care delivery that could figure this out. And I think we could really we could cut our medical bills by almost at least a half or maybe 3/4 of what they are now if we did this.
Okay,
we Democratic Socialists talk about a classless society, which means that you don't have what the Russians and others following their sort of socialism developed, the nomenclatura, the nomenclatura and the apparatchiks, yes, they're sort of a class society. People who work for a living, maybe worked very hard, often seasonally, because management was not always very efficient. And neither the nomenclatura nor the apparatchiks nor anybody else was really responsible for meeting people's needs, real needs. There were some objectives. The management psychology said, oh yes, we have to keep the workers healthy so that they'll be there when they're needed. The medical care was delivered to the workers and perhaps somewhat the felchers would prescribe. The felcher was something like a nurse, sort of a glorified nurse. And these were but you can say that Russia was industrially underdeveloped, and they did rapidly develop by Stakhanovite imposition.
You know Stakhanovites too?
The Stakhanovite, in the 30s, they gave special awards and built up workers who super produced and put all the other workers to shame and made it was like the old piecework system of 19th century Western capitalism, which made the workers compete to produce more in an hour, and so that the older workers would be dragging, and they were the quotas of production were always rising because to meet the enviable Stakhanovite. Stakhanovich was a hero worker. It was state capitalism. And it's exactly the opposite of what Marx was talking about. And the aim of a humanist socialism is for human freedom to be able to produce and enjoy. 6 days shalt thou labor. We do not live to work, we work to live. And that's why the Sabbath, the Shabbat, is holy. It's
one day
well.
people not working.
But the point is, when the 8-hour day, the Women's Christian Temperance Union was the one American national organization that supported the 8-hour day back in the early 1870s. Why? Because they believed in the blessings of the Sabbath. And, well, that is just a bit of
Okay.
history, and when it comes to the fact of how we are going to attain what kind of organization, what kind of movement you can build, I think that Marx had something to say as you look to people's real interests. And there are class interests, and that's why the working class is key to, it's not that rich people are born nasty or that workers are born saints. Neither is true, but there are interests in equality, there are interests in human dignity and rights, and the interests very often interfere. Right, wow.
Okay, I just had a few more ideas that I wanted to say. Tim really gave my speech when he got up here. But I'm still on the topic of harnessed harvest. Our energy, if you can know what your energy is, what is the greatest thing that you do? What is your talent? What is it that you are capable most of? What do you find your glee in? Do they, in a parallax way, come together? Okay? Because when your energy is at its highest point, that's when you're bringing in something that's more divine. Okay? And it is about the spirit. Much of life is about the frequency that you hold. What do you vibrate at? Do you take somebody else's vibration and detune it? Because some people are about that. And that goes back to the usufruct. You have soldiers that are still fighting this, or taking on this thing where the Romans want to harvest the energy of the populace. It's a concept that has been removed. But the bankers use it. They use usufruct, they use hypothecation, and they also use spoliation. Those are terms that the bankers use. And people are focused in one area in life and missing how they're being harvested. Okay? When you meditate, if you meditate and you are able to create a tone and you cause your ears to ring, you cause the melanin in your head, where the most melanin is in you, to tune to the planet. Most people don't know how to meditate. When you meditate, you tune yourself to who you are. Women are 7 times smarter than men. Women are on most of the time. They are on for the family. They're the best managers. They will manage the family. A man will get his paycheck and give the woman some and then do something else with the rest. Women will do for the family. Okay? A man is only on when he can get it up. But a woman is on all the time because she's there for life. She gives life. The frequency that you are, where you vibrate, if you don't know what that is, then you don't know who you are. You're able to allow somebody else to take you and do whatever they wish because you haven't been taught right. You haven't been introduced to yourself. And until you are introduced to who you are, the government and everything else that you want to use is creating fear, and that's the button that controls. Unless you know about joy. The base of the pyramid is the distance the Earth travels in 1 second. The Earth at the equator is traveling at 1,000 miles an hour, and is spiraling out off into space at 67,000 miles. We have to overcome contracts which bind the soil. You are the soil. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. You are just put right back into the soil. You come from the planet. The planet vibrates at a certain frequency. All the stuff that everybody's talking about is based on fear, pretty much. But if you can find your spirit in your laughter, listen to the babies, listen to the young children, listen to the tones that they make. That's what you're supposed to be making at this point in your life. At this point in your life, you're not supposed to be controlling other people. You're not supposed to be controlling other people. If you have a family and you have a legacy, are you trying to control all those people? Is soil or soul? Is soil or soul? You either get your soul before your soil goes back into this earth. Are you trying to control somebody else's soil because you are afraid? Are you dominating other individuals in any way, any paradigm that you choose? It should be about love, light, and laughter.
Wow.
Let's,
Let somebody,
Okay.
has not spoken yet.
okay, Brom, we need to,
Think we
How about the
should let-
women? No woman stood up yet.
Everyone else has had 2 turns, why don't I get a second turn?
it's almost 8:54 and we're getting close to,
1 minute, boss. I just want to speak 1 minute.
you're gonna have the closing remarks. You'll have the closing remarks.
Can I get my minute?
Let Dave go and let him, I'm sure he's gonna be very brief and he'll respect our time and everything
Yeah, I
else.
just want to point out here, everyone else has had a second turn, so I'm going to take my second turn. The fact is that there's 2 ways a country can have socialism. They can have it all at once, like Russia or China or Cuba, or they can have it a little bit at a time, like Great Britain. England went socialist gradually, and it made bums out of people and brought England down. They lost the empire. And the United States, our socialism started with the New Deal. And when you have socialism in a small dose, it causes production to fall, and then you have to have, it has to be backed up with more socialism. And then production falls further, and then you have to back that up with ever more socialism. Until finally, the government has to send out the military to people to jam a bayonet down their throat and tell them, now you get in there and you produce, you SOB, because if you don't, we're going to kill you. And so, in other words, socialism leads to an absolute dictatorial kind of a government eventually. It hasn't worked where it was applied overnight, like in Russia or China or Cuba. It hasn't worked where it was applied slowly, like in the Great Britain or the USA. And when you ask somebody who proposes socialism, their answer is, well, their socialism doesn't work, but mine would. Thank you.
Okay, speaker gets the final word.
Well, I should defer to the ladies too. Maybe they want to say something. We don't want to be a bunch of male chauvinists here and just monopolize the dialogue. No ladies want to speak, right? Well, that's okay. I'd like to apologize if I was not prepared, and there is a reason for that, because first of all, I'm not an easy person to do preparation, but I was away for a week. About 2 weeks ago, I had the agreement of these fine people here at the college at complexes to speak tonight on free health care. And the second thing is, for the last 3 days, I was down with some kind of, I don't know, I haven't, in 45 days, I haven't had 3 sick days, but I've had 3 semi-sick, almost sick days. I couldn't even talk for the last 2 days before today. I couldn't even talk. I don't know what hit me. So I was afraid tonight I'd have to call you guys up and say I can't talk. But that's no excuse though, you know, I should have been prepared better than I was. But still, the last thing I want to say is, in regard to my friend here, the Master of Ceremonies,
That's Brown.
of how,
Wrong.
Brown, yeah, I put a name for it, Brown. Brown, he said, he asks, how would this medical rights amendment become a reality? Well, these things come from the need of the people on the grassroots, and somebody has to articulate it, and I have been a self-appointed person who says, I'm going to go out there and preach this to the people who are receptive to it. And I say, I've got 275 million Americans who believe in this. So it's not hard for me to go out and find true believers. And the other thing is, see, I tell people Jesus Christ came to save your life. I mean, Jesus Christ came to save your soul. Aris F. Yanibas comes to save your body. So that's my mission, to save your body here on this terrestrial planet that we live in. And I think I spoke in very bad language about the people who are guilty, that we lack the basic needs that human beings deserve, like totally free medical care. Even the slaves used to have that. You know, industrial society is worse than slavery in some respects, because in slavery, when the slaves got old, became old in old Greece, in Rome, or in the old South in USA, they did not take a slave and put him out in the woods to die. They treated him through his old age, whether it was in ancient Greece or in 19th century United States. They would take care of the slaves and give them some medical care, shelter, food. They were allowed to die in dignity on the plantation. They weren't let out now to go and sleep under the bridge or in the parks and die. So this is, in effect, in reality, capitalism is worse than slavery. So now, that is what I wanted to say in a few words. And the main thing is, coming to the College of Complexes since the middle 60s, I can say that this is the one audience where the speaker learns more from the audience than the audience learns from the speaker. And for that, I am grateful to all of you who spoke up. And believe me, you enrich my understanding with your wisdom.
Thank you, sir.
And your expertise and your inspiration. And I'm really grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you soon again.